And the Oscar goes to everything.
Yes, I know the Oscars are done this year, but I still want to talk about the Best Picture nominees, like what I did last year. Let's start with Avatar: The Way of Water. This one's easy, I've already reviewed it on my channel, there are even 2 videos about it. In short, Avatar is great, The Way of Water is not. This coming from a guy who has been waiting for this sequel since before Obama left the White House. I understand that most people seem to have a more positive view on this movie than me, and that this and Top Gun Maverick were the chosen blockbusters for this year's circus, but to me this is retarded. The Way of Water only deserves nominations in technical categories. There's nothing great about the storytelling. 4 out of 10.
Top Gun Maverick.
Since we're on the topic of blockbusters. It was good, but I'm not sure I would say it's Best Picture worthy. It's a solid movie with a simple story and okay characters. The great thing about it are the action scenes. When people talk about a good theater experience, this is the kind of movie they mean. Something that makes it hard to breathe because how awesome everything looks. It almost makes you forget on how simple the plot really is. The third act of Star Wars: A New Hope, plus characters from Top Gun. However, I have to say that the actors were also great. Even people who aren't named Tom Cruise fit their role very well and did a good job. The characters they played weren't particularly interesting, but they looked good doing them. I gave this movie a 6 out of 10 when it came out, and I still stand by that rating. The music was also memorable, and that's rare when it comes to blockbusters.
All Quiet on the Western Front.
Nope, not for me. I have the same issue with this movie and the original from 1930, and that's the fact that I don't find their plots engaging. I get what they're trying to say, I understand the messages behind the films, I just can't connect with them in the way the movies want me to. I find them boring. Both films have plenty of sequences on the horrors and brutalities of war, how it's easy to be fooled with promises of glory when you don't know anything, all those points cut across. I just wish they had been more interesting to watch unfold. I wished I cared for any of the characters and what they were going through. But I couldn't. I don't even remember their names. They weren't interesting enough for me to get attached to. They functioned more like NPCs from a video game. The only real difference between this modern adaptation and the original, besides the fact that this one is in German,
Mit einem Sieg!
and it has colors, is the B storyline with German officers trying to end the war. And to me that was the weakest part of the new movie. You spend the whole time trying to make me care about the horrors these young men are going through, and now you're trying to make me feel bad for their superior officers as well. It doesn't work, I'm sorry. It felt flat and out of place. Speaking on the more technical parts of the movie, I don't understand why this film is nominated for visual effects. There were several parts where the CGI looked bad, on par with the film's small budget. I can understand why it doesn't look impressive, but this nomination? Why? The visual effects of a random X-Files episode are more believable than the war scenes of this film. I'm giving All Quiet on the Western Front a 5 out of 10. I give the one from 1930 a 6 out of 10. Both are semi-well-made films where I get very little from watching them. I much rather see Schindler's List, or Saving Private Ryan, or Son of Saul. Even Grave of the Fireflies would have been a better choice. At least then, I would have definitely felt something while watching it. The Banshees of Inisherin. I prefer In Bruges. This movie was good, but there were plenty of moments where I was just bored and waiting for something interesting to happen. It's not a story I would call great. Just like In Bruges, this is a dialogue and character heavy movie, and if you don't connect with what the film is trying to do, then you won't get much out of it. Maybe a few laughs here and there, but overall, you really need to be on the same frequency as the film. Also, if you don't like Irish accents, this movie is not for you. The performances were fantastic, just like the costumes and props, and pretty much everything when it comes down to putting together a movie that doesn't look like shit. I just wish it was more entertaining and had more story to offer. I don't think much of this film has other people. It was just fine. In Bruges is much better. 7 out of 10. In Bruges is an 8 out of 10, by the way. Elvis. This movie sucks. It's all style and no substance, and the style is horrible. Elvis barely qualifies as a movie, I would say. The fast pacing and jumping around make this thing closer to a trailer than anything else. And just like a trailer, there's nothing of substance to grab you. The story, the sequence of events, and the execution of everything, it all sucks. Besides being incredibly boring, it's also irritating to watch. I don't think I've ever hated Tom Hanks in a movie, But here, yeah, he was terrible. Don't know what's the point of having an over-the-top, cartoonish villain in a movie that's supposed to be a biopic about Elvis. Regardless of the authenticity of the character he's supposed to be playing, there isn't any.
The outdoor advertising, and he did the show on the stage, and the fans made it possible.
No, they are not putting a colored boy on the hayride.
The experience of watching every scene this guy is in, agonizing.
Ew.
Oh God, why did they do this to us?
Made me have flashbacks of Thor Love and Thunder, and that's not a good thing. The direction of this movie is all over the place. This is supposed to be a period piece, and yet we have modern music that pops out of nowhere and goes away just as fast.
There's more sides to the story, I'ma tell everybody. Had your ass in courtside.
And editing that makes the movie feel like it's on crack. Remember the movie Crank? That's the closest comparison I can make. The only difference is that the fast pace and editing of Crank fit the narrative that movie was going for. It made sense in Crank. Here, it just ruins everything and leaves you exhausted afterwards. The only redeeming aspects are Austin Butler's performance as Elvis and Elvis's music. And considering the movie had nothing to do with the creation of the music, there's only one good performance in this terrible movie. And it's not like his is anything special, not when compared to the competition. You watch The Whale or Tar, and it's easy to anticipate that both Brendan Fraser and Cate Blanchett will get a ton of acting nominations for their work. Austin Butler is just getting attention because he's playing an historic figure that kind of looks like him, and not doing a terrible job at it. It's a joke that this movie is nominated for Best Picture. Just look at this scene. It's not enough that they added porn music to it, they just had to keep cutting away and show Elvis's mom looking disappointed about something she couldn't possibly know is happening unless she's also watching the film. 2 out of 10, I never want to watch this again. Everything, everywhere, all at once. I'm gonna say it. I don't care. I know it's liked by everyone, or mostly everyone. It's not just critics that love it, the mainstream reception is also pretty supportive of this film. But to me, this movie is too silly and hard to take seriously. There's a difference between being over the top and just going fucking crazy with an idea. And to me, the movie goes bananas in a lot of places. The last hour is hard to go through. I stopped caring about everything that was going on and just wanted the movie to end. I've seen this thing 3 times already, because so many people have made such a big deal out of it, but it does not get better, at least for me. It gets harder to watch actually. I really like the beginning and the idea of exploring parallel universes and using that to create something weird and out there, but still grounded with human characters. I just think this movie stopped being grounded after a while and went someplace that I couldn't follow. It was too fucking stupid for me. I'm giving this movie a 7 out of 10 and that's where it stays. I understand why so many people love it, but I'm just not one of them. To me, this may have more of a story than Swiss Army Man, but they are on the same level when it comes to what I get out of them. Well-made films that I won't be watching a year from now.
The Fabelmans is
The Oscar bait movie. Also known as the movie that made me remember the passage of time. Just look at this girl. Do you know where you remember her from? She was a child actress from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I mean, what the fuck? Has it been that long since 2019? Fuck this shit, I'm with Joey. I don't want to do this anymore.
Let the others grow old, not me!
Kidding aside, this movie's fine. I mean, for some people, this is one of the best movies of the year, like John Campea.
The Flash. It's great. It's really good. Wonderful humor.
For others, this is Oscar bait trash, and I'm inclined to side with the latter group. Although I don't think this movie is trash, I believe it to be a prime example of how to bait some awards. It's a movie about a fictional version of Steven Spielberg, directed by the real version of Steven Spielberg, and it's all about how awesome cinema is. And if you like movies and know anything about the childhood of one of the greatest directors of all time, then you're probably gonna enjoy this film. Somewhat. Like I did. It's well made for starters, most of the performances are great, minus a few moments. There's a slap scene that's hilariously bad. I don't even understand the physics of how it works. She was gonna slap him in the face, he turns around and her hand just changes into a high five with his back. And somehow it leaves this huge red mark on him. Is she Superwoman? Because that slap didn't seem like it had nearly enough strength to do that. Anyway, my biggest problem with this film is the story. Minus the moments where Spielberg's character is gushing about how awesome movies are, and movies are awesome, the childhood story with the parents separating and the mom having an affair were more easy to see coming than Kylo Ren killing Han Solo in The Force Awakens. You could just see the writing on the wall every time the mom talked about the best friend. It was so obvious, it was kind of annoying. And midway through, the story changes and becomes more about the protagonist in high school and his school life. It was a weird narrative shift that makes this film feel like it has two different stories, and the latter one is far less compelling. Less moments of how awesome cinema is, and more stuff like anti-Semitism and bullying. It's still watchable, but there's nothing that sticks with you. It's all just meh. There's no charm to it. It feels like you're watching a mediocre episode of Law & Order SVU, with much better cinematography, but still. I gave this movie a 6, but have since changed it down to a 5. It's not a movie that gets better the more you watch it.
New movie, Tar.
I love this movie. This thing is awesome. It reminds me of my favorite Michel Haneke films. It's very similar to Amour and The Piano Teacher, gives off much of the same vibes. Cate Blanchett is phenomenal in it, and just about every other aspect of this movie is fantastic. The biggest compliment I can give it is that I really don't like movies about music. I hate documentaries about musicians, and whenever a movie has music as its main topic, it never plays well with me. Except Whiplash. And now this film. I didn't mind the music part. I was so fascinated by the way the characters talked about their work with so much passion and authenticity. It was just breathtaking to watch, like the action sequences in Top Gun Maverick, but in a different way. This is a movie I want to talk more in a separate video, so for now I'll just say that Tar is my favorite movie from 2022 and the only 9 out of 10. Depending on repeat viewing, I might change the score to a 10, like I did with Arcane. I really love this movie. It was never going to win Best Picture though, it's too specific for that category, but it's definitely one of the better films of the year. But I was surprised that Cate Blanchett didn't win for Best Actress. I did not see that coming.
Triangle of Sadness.
It took me 3 tries and about as many weeks to finish this movie once and for all. Needless to say, I'm not its biggest fan. The director is the same as The Square, Force Majeure, and Involuntary. I respect Force Majeure despite not liking it that much, but none of his films are compelling for me, and this one isn't any different. Despite winning the highest award at the Cannes Film Festival a year ago and being nominated for Best Picture, Best Director and Best Original Screenplay, this movie isn't something I connected with. However, unlike Everything Everywhere All at Once, another movie I didn't connect with but respected, I don't think this film is anything special. It's a satirical comedy that's not very funny or very subtle. It's very transparent in what it's going for. Some critics have said that this aspect makes it more appealing to mainstream audiences without losing its message. Somehow, I really doubt that. My problem with it is that its message isn't new or special, and the way the film is executed, like I said before, it's just not that funny. No matter how many reviews I read on how this movie is hilarious and not boring, I can't agree with them. There's an entire sequence about money in relationship that goes on for it feels like half an hour, and it's just fine. Its only saving grace are the actors. This is a very well acted movie. Every performance is fantastic. It could even pass as a documentary. That's how natural everyone comes off. Watching this after having seen the last Fast and Furious sequel in theaters, it's night and day when it comes to acting and dialogue. And the cinematography is pretty damn good as well. It doesn't come off like a Hollywood movie. There aren't pointless close-ups of characters' faces whenever a dramatic moment is about to happen. The editing isn't filled with random takes from multiple angles just because the editor didn't know what to do with the leftover footage. The camera is there to allow the actors to convince you that what you're watching is real. Not to say the camera is stationary the whole time. There's a seasickness sequence where the camera's movements match the way the cruise is moving in the water. But that's it. The camera doesn't take away attention from other parts of the film or force you to pay attention to specific things. It blends in with the environment, and that works really well for this type of movies. The only problem is the story. It kind of sucks. What this movie has to offer isn't nearly as entertaining as it thinks it is. Some jokes land, yes, but for most of the runtime, it's just tedious. That's probably why it took me so long to finish the film. I didn't want to watch it, I just did it for this video, like a job. And that's not a good thing. You don't want a movie to feel like a chore. I'm giving Triangle of Sadness a 4 out of 10.
Women talking.
I saw this movie a few months ago and I remember very little about it, other than it was very, very boring. I won't call it bad, per se, just mediocre. It's very in the middle. Like, the film is well put together, extremely well acted, and there's an interesting story somewhere. The problem is the way the people behind the film chose to tell this story. The plot isn't very engaging. It goes from interesting when the characters start debating about what to do, to downright tedious once you realize that debating is everything this movie has to offer. And the dialogue is good, but it isn't on the level it needs to be to make a movie that seems like it doesn't move forward feel compelling. The story is about a group of women in one of those religious cult camps in America that realize they are being sexually abused while they sleep. The women are debating whether they should leave the group or forgive the man, because if they don't forgive the man, then they won't get into heaven. That kind of religious crazy shit. That's the premise and pretty much everything about the movie. There aren't any twists or turns, not that I can remember, and the ending is predictable. The film's saving grace comes down to the cast. All the actresses and few actors in this thing give great, likable performances, better than some of the other nominees. That was really the only thing that kept me from giving up. That and the fact that I had this video to make. I'm giving Women Talking a 5 out of 10. And with that done, there's no point in making a segment about which movie is going to win Best Picture, but I do want to say that in my prediction box, I had either The Fabelmans, because Spielberg, or the eventual winner, Everything Everywhere All at Once, to get the big award. So, at least I was able to narrow down the options and get it right. Kinda. Anyway, see you next year.